Welcome. We are so pleased you can join us today for events in celebration of the United Nations International Day of Women and Girls in Science. I know everyone is eager to hear our friend and colleague Lyr Lobo speak, so I will be brief. Lyr works and plays on the leading edge of educational technology, and she is a pleasure to know personally. Her keynote today exemplifies Lyr's broad knowledge and her skill in evoking a rich learning experience for all. Please do join us afterwards for a tour of this Women in STEAM Center, followed by a visit with Starlight at the Nutrition Resource Center nearby. Francisco has kindly agreed to video today's events, so be sure to smile. As always, a huge thank you to Lissena Wisdomseeker for providing a home and support for all these activities and places of learning. Inspiration Island. And now, I am pleased and honored to present Lyr Lobo.
Why, thank you for such a wonderful introduction. This is my 250th keynote address, and what's interesting is we're going to look at women today who count things too. I love STEAM. In 1995 through 97, as part of my doctoral research, I created a virtual reality environment with a head-mounted display device. And I love tech. I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. Prior to my doctoral research, I worked for Air Force Space Command on the Situation Room software, similar to the movie War Games. And of course, you know me, I have to do a trivia game, right? I love hearing your thoughts, and I love it when you chat during the talk. So please feel welcome to type in the chat log, okay? So here's the instructions. It's case insensitive. It does not matter, and we'll get started here. Now, as Val just noted, we've added the arts to STEM. And you know what's funny is 12 years ago, I had students doing just this, so I'm so gratified to see that this is now popular, right? Not accepted by everyone, but you know. Creativity and innovation benefit from the arts. And that's something we've noticed lacking in science, at least in software engineering, because we notice that the more uniform and replicable we get, the more boring, right? We're not very creative. And so models come to life when we have these design principles. Now, the Software Engineering Institute's Capability Maturity Model notices this. As you get to level 5 in maturity, you tend to get very boring. Okay, when I was asked to speak on STEM careers, my first thought was to look for data regarding education. Let's face it, it's an occupational hazard of mine, right? And the first thing I started noticing, and I guess I better follow along with my slides, right? I'm looking at two sources at the same time. On slide 6 is when we'll begin our game, in case you're wondering. So there will be a question for you shortly for you to answer, okay? The red bars on this diagram reflect women. And you'll notice that we're of course behind men, but you'll notice the progression over time. For women who have no college, they have fewer opportunities in STEM careers. So that's one of the first things we need to encourage is education. It is a bizarre chart. I did provide links. And oh, by the way, let me give you the link to the content in case you want a copy of it. And then if you want a copy of my slides, this trivia viewer, you can have that too. Oops. I'm not seeing them in the chat. Let me try it again. Oh, there they are. I'm having a little bit of lag. My apologies. Okay, so let me go to the table next. And here we have two tables. At the top, where I've marked the red arrow, you see the 24%. Mary Lou, here's the link for it in the chat log. And then, tell you what, I'll share with you my iPad. How's that? for a quick fix, real quick. Let's see. Let me do that after the session, because if I start doing it now, I may mess up the game, right? Okay, so if you're looking at this table here, you'll notice that 30% were in computer science and math, but dropped to 27% at the bottom of the table in that far right side. See where it says percent female? The bottom right. So we have computer science and math, engineering, physical and life sciences, and STEM managers. And so you can see the difference between 2000 and 2009, which I think is what's interesting here. Hi, Rhiannon. So here's a trivia question for you. Who is in the top left photo? She won 2 Nobel Prizes, and she won the first Nobel Prize as a woman. Yes, Marie Curie. That's right. Now, for any of you who are spelling it correctly, you can use small case, but you have to spell it correctly. The viewer whispers to you politely and says you were correct, but you weren't quite fast enough, right? Anyway. Now, I don't go into detail about these women because we have limited time today, right? But I want to point out that each one of them made sacrifices. Each one of them faced hurdles like we do today. And they had to overcome quite a few biases. Let's look at another group of women. These are African American women scientists here who have made incredible contributions. The first one, Alice there, she helped cure leprosy. And she was at the University of Hawaii. And she became a professor there, the first African American female professor. Mamie Phelps Clark, you may have heard of the doll test, where they looked at biases, where they handed kids dolls of various races and then asked them for their impressions of the dolls. And several of them noted that when they had the black doll, they thought the black doll was the bad doll. And so they started looking at biases. I know that sounds terrible, but each of these made a contribution that helps to advance our understanding about people and in the fields of medicine, and of course 2 human computers are there who made great inroads when NASA was called NACA and then later NASA. They were instrumental in those early flights. Without them. And of course the mother of chemotherapy. See, I had no idea some of these facts until I started diving into this. Mae Jemison. She runs a business today, was, of course, the astronaut there. And then Alexa Kennedy, a neurosurgeon. And you know, she lacked confidence. She nearly gave up. She nearly thought that she would be unsuccessful. And then, of course, went into neurosurgery just because she went to a summer program, a research program, and had a love of genetics. I'm typing that out because I know I didn't put that in the notes, right? And then Jocelyn Elders was the Surgeon General. And Mary Eliza Mahoney, the first certified nurse in the U.S., and of course, Helen Dickens, OBGYN. So we've had so many breakthroughs. We follow in the footsteps of these amazing women, and we can see from their example that women in STEM comprise 57% of the physical and life sciences jobs, while men are at 31%. And those numbers are saturation into the overall number, which you'll notice at the top here is 2.5 million workers in STEM. I know what you're thinking. Get on with the with the game. So here's the next question. Did you see an occupation that was missing? And of course those weren't occupations, those were degrees, but there was a degree field that was missing. Oops, I went kind of fast. What's the occupation that was missing? Anyone? Begins with a T? There you go. Yeah, but no oops. Yeah, we didn't see education there, and I know why. It's because it's not one of the classical sciences. But this is one of the problems with statistics is when we filter, when we look at a group, and here's an example here on this chart, you'll see that education occupations are here now, right? And of course they're part of the STEM occupations, but they're like a separate category, and they weren't part of those degree programs because some people get a degree in education, right? And then of course teach STEM subjects. So I just wanted to point that out, that anytime we're looking at statistics, we have to think about these crossover skills. We also notice that not everyone who graduates with a STEM degree goes into a STEM job. In fact, we look at re-entry issues for women as well. So what is your STEAM identity? I want you to think about yourself today, because you are a strong part of this whole process. We are the people who inspire today's generation, right? And of course, and I included some silly photos here, right? Mine up in the upper right, I'm wearing a head-mounted display device, of which I have like 3 or 4, right? Barbara's, we were holding a little wine festival after one of our research efforts. She's in the upper left. And then of course, this is the Mars habitats, and we have a woman scientist sitting here working with the instrumentation. So here's our next question. What percentage of Americans are scientifically literate? Type the number in the chat log. When we get it right, the viewer will tell us, Rhiannon got it. Yeah. 20%. Now, what does that mean, though, right? Now, I know you're thinking arcane science, aren't you? 80% in the U.S. do not understand the science articles described in A, B, or C. Science Digest, Popular Science, or the New York Times Science section. Just give me a letter, A, B, or C. Dania got it. C. That's right. And everyone who's typing C, you're getting a confirmation as well. Let's take a look. What are they reading that's so difficult to understand? Now I want you guys, does everyone know how to zoom in on this? You alt-click it and then zoom on in and get close to it with your cursor. And if you look on the very far left, far right, you'll notice it says starfish see pretty well in the deep ocean. By the way, starfish have eyes. I don't know about you, but I don't consider that arcane science titling. You know what I'm saying here? 80% do not understand this. This is what we're talking about here. And of course, on that last slide, I gave you a citation for a chapter that you can download. You can download the whole book that talks about some of these problems. That's true. That's true, Marley. But I believe they mean when they read it, they don't understand it, and they feel very uncomfortable with it. And I guess that part is not at all humorous. So let me get to the next question. Is this image depicting a problem at Walmart? This has been going around on Twitter, okay? And some of you may have seen it if you look at Twitter at all. And of course, it comes from a 2010 image. It's actually a 2010 event, but you know how things recycle? 15 is this many. So give me a yes or a no. Is this a problem? Just tell me what you think. Yes or no. That's interesting. So say no, gentle. Remember, I'm doing pattern matching. So I need a yes or a no. Yeah, just say no. You're so funny, anyone. Okay, everyone finished? All right, I'll let Speakeasy catch up. No, the answer's no. Here's why. Holding up three hands is a problem, right? But this is actually a spoof. You know how we have fake news and fake everything? Well, this is satire from crack.com. It was a contest where they asked people to to come up with instructional diagrams for people who suck at everyday life, right? And of course, this is what someone decided would be perfect for Walmart, okay? And it is funny, but it makes us think because as we think about ourselves and our careers and taking ourselves seriously, right? Getting past all our baggage. This is some of it from the media. Our media and our culture help perpetuate some of the limitations that we seem to take on, you know, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Math, reading, and science. This is the PISA test that 15-year-olds take every 3 years. And they do this, this is 71 countries. I know it's impossible to read. The good news is the next slide's a little easier to read, okay? But the U.S. is the red bar across here, and you'll notice we're like 38th or lower in math ability. We're 24 to 25 in science ability out of 71 countries, okay? Let's take a look at some of the countries because I know some of you are from these countries, right? We have Canada here who's rocking up near the top. So I want to do a shout out to Buffy here. You'll notice you're like 6th or 7th there, you know. Anyway, the U.S. is the green bar near the bottom. And I know I'm not picking on the U.S., but that's right, Lori Vaughn. But I just want us to realize that that we have a way to go, right? Yep. Anyway, but you know, I don't mind that other people rank higher. And you know why? Because that gives us something to think about. I think about testing, and I think about 15-year-olds in Massachusetts, one of the states that they reported for this. And I think about the very great burden they have for representing all of us. You know, so here's another question coming up. Let me click my viewer again. I'm having just a little bit of lag. Okay, culture, stereotypes, and attitudes. What type of bias affects our understanding and decisions in an unconscious manner? There we go. You would think Rhiannon's a shoe-in here, but she didn't see this talk beforehand. It began with the letter I, and it's implicit bias. You know, I had to think about this because each of us has subconscious influences that cause us to judge things a certain way or to think about them. And how many of you have ever heard that women are bad at math? You know, in fact, I may have even said it myself. And then, of course, I was thinking about severely advanced math and doing it, in my head, you know, not everyday math or not business math, not even tax math, or quite a bit of the math that I work with for computer science. So we have these preconceptions and misconceptions which are reinforced by our culture and our media. I was looking at videos about the weather girl and how women meteorologists really resent that as some of the baggage that they want to abandon, right? And so here's some research from 617 women scientists. And this is from a book. I saw the article and I've listed it here at the bottom for you. 5 biases that push women out of STEM and create barriers for reentry. Prove it again. How many of you feel like you have to prove yourself? We have to work harder, faster, do it better, you know, especially, and by the way, I'm not picking on men, Fran, but I'm just saying that somehow it's like we lack confidence only because we believe there's this perception that we just have to be a little bit better. And, you know, I've heard this from some of my African American colleagues, that they feel like they always have to prove it. Then there's the tightrope. Act like a man, you know, be manly or be professional, you know, but be feminine too. And of course that's always a struggle. I remember being told when I took one position that women there had to wear their hair up and had to wear skirts and had to do all these various things. And I told them, I'm sorry this is not on the speakeasy, I said, when my hair goes up, my mouth closes. It's a strange phenomenon. I wasn't being unkind, but I was being serious, actually. I'm painfully shy, which is why I count my talks. And after I've done 250 of them, I figure so far so good, right? Anyway, the maternal wall, this competence question, men are rarely challenged when they have children and families, but women are, right? Yet it should be equal for both. The tug of war, the choices we have, even with our female counterparts, you know, that's where you don't have support from older generations of women. And I don't mean older women, I mean women who've already gone through the cycle for a few years and have built up their credibility, right? And then the isolation that some women feel, where they're not invited to events because they're such a small demographic, people think they won't be comfortable. Now I know this doesn't sound very positive, does it? So I better move along. Here's a chart. It reflects the races of the women who are responding from the 617 women scientists. 60 of them were in in-depth interviews, and then of course 557 were by survey. So it's a very interesting report. You may want to take a look at it. And of course we can see that the prove yourself is the first category, and that of course has the most, followed by the fourth one, which is support from other women. So there is a lot of support, but we could do better, right? So here's our next question, last question. In a new media consortium keynote address in a virtual world, Dr. Constance Steinkuhler presented her research from a massively multiplayer blank blank in her investigation of scientific habits of mind. Oh, you're close. No. Look at the letters. It begins with O, and yeah, there we go, gentle. See, online game. It was a massively multiplayer online game. What she did was she studied 2,000 posts in the World of Warcraft. And she was looking at what people said in these 2,000 posts, how they exhibited these 5 things you see here. Scientific habits of mind I put in purple, so you get a sense of it there. But she was trying to show how when we talk online, how it's purposeful and how it inspires a natural scientific discourse, how people use math, how they do problem solving, how they demonstrate digital literacy. It's a beautiful study, and I have her permission to give talks based on her talk. She gave the keynote, and then I gave a talk right after her. It was in an enterprise edition of Second Life years ago. You're not buying this? Oh, well, it's a wonderful study, and as a result, you'll notice anyone, after graduation, she served for 2 years in the executive office as the senior policy analyst for science and technology in the White House. And of course, she was looking at how games might incentivize and empower conversations about science and the application of math to get more women involved. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying that as we try to address this need to encourage more women in STEM, that we get them involved. And of course, her focus is on games. Well, let's face it, guess what? Mine is too, right? I love games, I love simulations, and I love putting people inside immersive experiences and letting them decide to be the science officer, as we did on this Mars expedition. We had 4 science stations where they would go through a challenge and have to make all kinds of decisions and keep refining these decisions using critical thinking, problem solving, and of course a progressive bit of information. It was about a 2.5-hour scenario, and then they would land on Mars and be on a mining colony thinking about that. We won $25,000 for it because we used a variety of holodeck-like simulations. Content would appear and disappear as people move through the simulation, similar to instancing in a game. Well, as we start to wrap up, I invite you to conduct your own visioning activity. This is something I do every year on my birthday, and I take my family with me. My son, he's 25 now. I began 5 years before he was born, and of course this is my 30th year, right? And I sit down with a notebook, a tablet, and we all jot down 25 dreams in 9 categories. And I ask myself, I say, if you have all the time, the money, and the talent in the world, what would you wish for in these 9 areas? And it occurred to me that the career area is what we're talking about today in this keynote. So you could just think about that. But as an icebreaker, I often ask people, what would they have in their dream home? What would they accomplish for education or for their dream job? If you could be anything in the world, it made no difference, none of your current limitations, time, or money. What would you do? And of course, I list a bunch of mine. Are you guys thinking about yours? And you'll notice these other categories, right? Philosophy and spiritual, your religion. What is it that feeds your spirit? Travel. Where would you go? What would you do for yourself and then for your family, for your social, for your friends, and then of course your significant other. That's true, Marley. Absolutely is. But you and I were just talking about this, in the last week and a half, about the fact that we always have dreams. That's what I think life is about, is our ability to dream and to think about the world in a different way. I think that's what keeps us alive. Now, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But what I call it is shopping until I drop, because let's face it, this doesn't cost me any money, right? Here's some of my dream jobs. Now, you guys are going to laugh. I know. You're all thinking, why Google research scientist? That's because I want to play with lots of toys, do lots of crazy things, and think way outside the box, right? I'd also like to be an astronaut, but there's a part of me that's a comfort puppy. I want to stay at home too, right? And then of course, I would love to be a famous game designer, because my heroes are all game designers, right? And then of course, a professor at a couple of different places. I'm already a professor at a couple places. So what this is suggesting is that I've already realized some of my dreams by doing this for 30 years, right? Once you have your list of 25 things, then you circle your top 5. And when I did this, one of mine in 1988 was to get my doctoral degree, and in 1997 I completed my degree. And so, I thought it was unattainable in '88 when I thought of it, right? I thought, wow, I'm not sure I'm smart enough, or I'm not sure I'm in the right position, or, attending classes is going to be rough. I've already done my graduate degree, and I'm busy working, and I'm so busy working, who has time for school, right? Well, as we close here, let's stand strong together. This is an image that we took as a promo. Remember this, Buffy? For VWBPE 2013. I have a whole bunch of these. I took lots and lots of images while we were making a music video for the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education, which is coming up. And we're all standing there, and I kept thinking about all these women around me and how, because we're all together, we're part of an organism that helps to change the world. We're creating an energy and a mentorship. Marley, when you run your symbolic modeling sessions, you are mentoring and inspiring others. Lissena, when you're doing your whole brain health and the nonprofit commons, Rhiannon, and everything you do, you're just all over the place, right? We are all like organisms that are all bouncing off of each other, right? And for all of you too, Mary Lou and anyone, all Cinders, all the things you do, it's just amazing. When I touch a viewer, I think of you, right? And so each of you, it's like pieces of you are stuck to me all over, right? And so I just wanted you to know this, that my success depends on you. And here I am in the center with Kay's, with Kay Novak, who's Kavan Zinovka, and of course Delightful Doangle, who's Barbara Truman. And we were at the ELK conference. We've just been doing some STEM and games there, and I just wanted to share that with you. We're holding our book, of which several of you, dancers and others, have contributed chapters. And it's about selfhood and society. And I'm not selling the book, by the way. It's hopelessly expensive. But it was important to write it because it was part of the same energy to tell the stories. And I want to inspire you to tell your stories and to have a great conference. If you'd like a copy of this, viewer, right now I'm going to set it to copy. Copy. And as soon as I finish, hopefully it'll still score. There we go. Now remember, we're all winners. The game's just there to give us some fun as we're playing. Thank you, and have a great Women in STEAM conference.